H2O, yeah! If you're still here after that horrible intro, howdy everyone, I'm the Shadow of the Hawk. Today, I'm talking about another fictional fantasy force. And I wanted to do something a little bit different, like the Knights of Bretonnia or the Marching Armies of Abyssia, but I spoke to someone, my brother, and he requested I talk about the Knights of Grimm from the show Grimm. There are no on-scene instances of the Knights of Grimm doing anything at all. So he chose again, and we're doing the Starks from Game of Thrones. So we're going from the east of A Song of Ice and Fire to the north of A Song of Ice and Fire. Is that okay? Sorry, I thought someone knocked on my door. No one did. No one did. Good. So the Starks. First, before we talk about the Starks, we need to talk about Northern society as a whole. The North is Scotland, basically Scotland, but worse is the way I would describe it. You've got like a slight intermingling of the southern people that came over and pushed out the older populations, but they still are very much in the old ways. Kind of like that transitional period before England really took over Scotland and made it part of the United Kingdom. So the North is going to be very different than the South. The biggest difference is the separation of knighthood. You don't really have knights in the North, though most of them would probably be in White Harbor, which is the seat of House Manderley, which is in and of itself a southern house loyal to the Starks. That is also where you will find most of the heavy cavalry. Just going off some random statistics from the wiki, the North has a ratio of about 4 men to every 1 cavalryman. Rather, 4 infantry to every 1 cavalry, but that's not 1 heavy knight, that's 1 dude on a horse, which could be many things. It could be a light skirmisher, it could be a light scout, it could be a medium raider, it could be a heavy infantry, it could be a heavy cav, it could be a heavy shock cav, it could be so many. So we can't really lock down on the kinds of cavalry. From some certain shots in the show, it looks to be kind of like a sort of medium skirmishing cav, or like kind of a raider type cavalry. Not really a lot of horse archery type stuff, just spear, sword, axe, that sort of thing. So with all that out of the way, we got to also talk about the culture. So cavalry isn't really what the North is going to be known for. It's got a little bit of it. Most of it is probably more of an outrider role or a scouting role. What are they going to be known for? They're going to be known for their infantry. The Northmen are typically described as larger than the men of the South. They are hardier than the men of the South. And there's a little bit of credence to that. It is a different genetic stock of people who have been in this part of the world for a lot longer, and these are also the people who are up in the more hardy parts where, at one point, giants and dire wolves roamed. That is probably going to breed a population of people that are stronger than your average person. Combined with that, the North, again, the Northern culture is very martial and violent. You're pretty much only going to live if you're able to stand up and fight. So there's going to be a lot of really strong and capable men, basically. Another factor is what are they called? Like the winter wolves, I believe is the term for them. Basically, if the northern population, at least before Aegon conquered everyone, the northern population had this tradition where during winter, any man who didn't have like children, and like he had kids, but like if they were of age, if he didn't have a family, or his family could live without him, he would pick up a weapon, he would follow a Stark of some renown, and they would go south, and they would basically wage war in the south, and either die down there, or they would come north with wealth for their families. This would happen every couple of years, because like I mentioned, this happens at the brink of winter. The reason for this is during winter, you didn't really have a lot of supplies to go around. So, where most peoples wouldn't really be waging war in the winter because it's a struggle for foraging, the Starks would most likely be capable of engaging in warfare during the winter because they are used to those conditions, which would immediately give them a massive advantage over other groups that they're fighting, such as, say, the Lannisters, the Dothraki, the Bretonnians, because looking at groups like the Romans, for example, there were seasons of warfare. You would go out and you would wage war during the spring and the summer and kind of wind it down in the fall, and then you would ford up for the winter. You also saw this as late as the Revolutionary War with I'm blanking on it. Where George Washington wintered. Something Ford. You even see this kind of now in modern day in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Conflict kind of stopped around wintertime because fighting in the cold is just fucking hard. Both sides are kind of pulling back to pre-battle positions or to wherever they can like comfortably winter and just like a little bit of exchanging and skirmishing. The Starks seemingly wouldn't have that kind of weakness because they are used to this kind of terrain, and if they're going to war for this type of situation, they would be going to war for words. They would be going to war because like, hey, we don't have enough food for the people that at home. We're going to have to take what we need to survive. So they would be very much capable of foraging, raiding, and acting militarily. And again, they're used to the snow. It's snowy even during summer. So they would know how to handle snow, move around in the snow, fight in the snow. This is where we get into the part of the Northmen that is a little bit harder to judge. The North is not the South. It is a lot more divided. There's only really one actual city. Towns are a lot smaller, a lot more isolated, and really only come together during winter because that's where they can congregate fuel and food. Because of this, the standard equipment from a Northman soldier, which is more of a fjord rather than a standing army, is going to be inconsistent. Unlike the Dothraki, which are a purely military society, or martial society, the North isn't. You still have farmers, hunters, fishers, miners, lumberers, that sort of stuff. You're not going to have... Every person might have a level of combat skill and might have an axe or a spear or something. They're not going to have... But they're not going to have the same level of day-to-day combat training. Further with that, their equipment is also going to vary heavily. A man in the service of a lord, specifically with the role of being a soldier, I believe, off the top of my head, I can actually pull up the wiki page quickly, I believe the North, most men of the North use mail. Mail is mail. They predominantly use mail. So that is like what you would see from the retinue of a lord, like a man in service of House Stark or a man in service of House, what are they called? House Bolton. The Manderleys, you might get a little bit better equipment because they're a port town. They can afford it. They're also a southern house. You'll probably have some knights mixed in on the ground. But then you might have some random guy from fuck all nowhere literally just showing up in his tunic, his fur tunic, which that is his padded like winter clothing would still serve pretty well as a bit of armor because it's going to be hard to cut into that. So it might be pretty effective. So you're going to see a lot of use of shields, shield formations, shield walls, that sort of thing. The force will also probably be easier to rout than something like, say, the Lannister army, which is a bunch of career soldiers who are trained and drilled and disciplined, as we see throughout different shots of the show. So what you're looking at, and going off the wiki's numbers, max military strength that could be raised by the North is about 45,000. They can raise about 20,000 of that quickly. I'm going to say that is ranging from like leather or padded armor, and then a shield, and then an axe or a spear of some kind, to scale or mail armor, a decent like pike, halberd, billhook, a sword or a dirk or an axe as a reserve weapon, a shield. Fuck, that's water. Wait, one. All the flailing about I do, I probably shouldn't have had a drink here. So, yeah, what I was saying. Most likely going to be ranging from light infantry to heavier infantry, with a heavier emphasis on lighter infantry. Now, the groups that can't really be raised effectively are going to be the most outlying tribes. These are going to be your northern clans or your Scanigmen. Scanigmen, I think that's what they're called. The Skagosi, which are like from the island of Skagos, which are described as very, very different to northern. So I imagine the northern clans would be kind of similar to what you see in the hill folks that Tyrion meets in the show, and the Skagosi are probably going to be somewhere around the same. You know, maybe someone has a suit of leather armor or padded armor, and then it's going to mostly be pig iron. Or actually, no, the Skagosi and northern tribes, they'd probably have decent armor simply because fur armor is better than just a shirt, and you need the furs in order to just survive. So they probably would have better armor. So actually, no, Skagosi and Northern clans. The only difference probably be is they'd be using iron rather than steel. Is really the only difference I can probably assume. Okay, Shadow here. I made a misunderstanding of something. I forgot to include this. Though I couldn't find much about the Skagosi. Let me just double check their wiki page. Yeah, there's not really much involving the Skagosi, but the Northern clans, I thought I was forgetting something about them, so I went and checked the wiki page just quickly. It turns out that the Northern Mountain clans actually have, they're not the savages that the Valesman clans are. These are actually a population of people who, stand by, like, they're basically just a little bit more feral Northmen. They make use of two-handed weapons, and they also wear mail. Like, they do have weapons and armor. Like, they do use steel equipment. So, addendum to that, it seems like you wouldn't really have the savage people like you see in the Vale. It's probably mostly... the mountain clans are probably going to provide the same thing, light to heavy infantry of some kind. Also, they have ponies. So, again... there might be some light, medium cavalry. I'm doubting they would have anything close to heavy cavalry. This is just a quick addendum I wanted to add. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. See you next time. So what would you see with that? You would probably see a form of kind of what Rob does. He doesn't really defend a position. He is constantly on the offensive, because you can never, with the Northman armies, they're not really able to pick a position and hold the line. They don't have the morale, they don't have the discipline, they don't have the training. They are not a royal army, they are not an official army, they are a bunch of dudes being thrown together and told, go kill. So what you would probably most likely want to use the Northern Army for is divide them up into bands of like a couple hundred or maybe 1,000 people and just send them to the winds. Just burn, take, slaughter, maybe congregate to take a fort or something. But you would never want to get caught, unless you have numerical superiority, you would not want to be caught in an actual fight, and you also would not want to get caught in a position where the enemy can effectively use their cavalry. You would want to limit yourself to thick forests, bogs, fields after a heavy rainstorm, or if you can like defend a flank with a river or some other form of natural impasse to keep that cavalry. Basically, you don't have method. You've got spears and pikes and halberds, maybe. That is your counter against heavy shock cavalry, which are very, very effective. I'm looking into other settings where you might have a monstrous creature. No, what the north of like Brandon the Builder might be able to stand and take out something like a Jabberslythe or a Basilisk or a Giant. The modern North would not be able to. An army of monstrous creatures would send them probably running for the hills, except for like a brave few. Or if you manage to kill one and rally everyone to realize they're not hard to kill, and that would probably not really work. What else? But you can hear me praising them a little bit more than the Dothraki, because unlike the Dothraki, whose whole culture is devoted to the execution of war and the fact that they do it badly, the North isn't entirely situated around warfare. It's just something they have to pick up every once in a while. And yet they do it a lot better than the Dothraki. So much better, as we see in the show. They're playing to their strengths, and they're not really falling into their weaknesses. Speaking of strengths, the Crannogmen. Not really brought up much in the show, so I'm not really going to consider them too much. But the Crannogmen of the Neck are, if you've ever read the Ranger's Apprentice series, they're basically the Rangers of Erlen. They're stealthy, effective, skirmisher infantry. They're the kind of people I'd want to be using as scouts. It would be kind of less useful outside of the Neck, because they wouldn't really know the terrain very well, which is, I'd probably have whatever my Ranger Corps from the Neck would be. I'd have them like go out and just explore Westeros and try to like figure out where the trails are, where the tracks are, if they've got time to do that during their day-to-day living, and like make some charts and stuff like that. That way I could effectively use them as scouts and ambushers. Because just imagine, like, you've got an army of Lannisters. Like, the Lannisters need to divide up their own forces to hunt down the Northmen. They're walking through a wooded road. They hear some whistles, and then, like, 70 or 80 Crannogmen just start raining arrows and sling bullets from the air and just devastate the Lannisters. They reform, and then coming from the flank or the front, a Stark army comes running down, roaring and yelling. Some of them are dual-wielding axes. Some of them are just running forward. One dude is probably naked because he couldn't afford the armor. And just, like, absolute carnage. So basically what I'm saying with the Northmen is the most effective use for them is rapid assault, divide, conquer, and basically skirmishing tactics. Now, some of you might be going, why didn't you argue that with the Dothraki? The Dothraki never do that. We see this happen in the show. This is what Robb does. Granted, he sacrifices an army to pull off this maneuver, but that's because he's going up against the military mastermind of Tywin Lannister. Going up against someone of lesser strategic intelligence, you could probably do a little bit more finicky stuff. Or if you were acting as the aggressor with more of a foot forward, because Tywin had already been mobilizing his army anyway. Whereas Robb was a couple months behind the curve. So, that take, it's probably going to get me yelled at. I hope I remember to edit stuff in. See you next time, boys and girls.